Hey, welcome to Today Matters. My name is Scotty James, and I'm one of the pastors here at Skyline Church. Today's devotional has us in Joshua chapter 4, verses 19 to 23. But before we get into the scripture, let's set the context for a moment. And so 40 years previous to this moment, God just rescued Israel with great signs and wonders out of Egyptian bondage. And he took them to the promised land, but they weren't able to get in because they didn't have faith. They were so focused on the obstacles in front of them instead of taking faith in the God who was with them. And so because of their lack of faith, God says, fine, you're not getting in, go back into the desert and march around for 40 years. And so for 40 years, they're marching around the wilderness until the next generation of adults rises up. And so this generation is here, and now God is about to take them into the promised land. And so in the first generation, he parted the Red Sea. In this next generation, he parts the Jordan River. And as they're walking across the Jordan River, God tells them to take 12 stones from the middle of this river. And this is where we'll pick up. It's Joshua chapter 4, again, verse 19. It says, on the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea. And so from this passage, we see the purpose of the stones was to remind Israel of what God had done, and also to be for them to use this as a teaching point for the next generation to teach them what God had done. And so the responsibility to educate the next generation on what God had done fell on the parents, not on the priests. This is very important. This is a theme all throughout Scripture. God places the responsibility of discipleship on the parents, not the priests. And so I want to encourage you, if you're a parent, take ownership of the responsibility of investing in the spiritual development of your children. This does not mean that we don't need pastors or we don't need spiritual leaders. We absolutely need them, but we have to understand that they are a support to us, not a replacement of us. The job of discipling children really falls on the parents. And so I want to encourage you, take ownership of that and see your children as those who you want to invest in on a spiritual level. Something that me and my wife have started since COVID happened is we have what's called the evening scriptures in our house. And so every night before my kids go to bed, I'll sit with them for about 20 minutes, and I read two chapters of the Bible to them. And we'll just go through it. I'll read it to them, and they ask me questions. And it's just a sweet time of us pursuing God together and me investing in them on a spiritual level. And they ask a lot of questions that I don't always have the answers to. But this is the beautiful thing about being a parent. God does not require me to know everything in order to disciple my children. All he expects of me is to pour that which I do know into them. And so when questions arise that I don't have the answer to, I simply say, I don't know. And it's an opportunity for me to go and research and find those answers for my children. So again, I want to encourage you, don't feel like if you don't have all the answers, you can't invest in your kids on a spiritual level. Pour what you do know into them. That's if you're a parent. If you're not a parent, I want to encourage you as well. You still have a story about what God has done in your life. And so whether you have children or not, you can still tell of the mighty works that God has done in your life to those around you. Be very open with that story and share that story, because as people look to you and see what God has done in your life, they get an idea of what God might be able to do in their life. And so whether you're a parent or whether you're not a parent, be very open and ready to share about the mighty works that God has done in your life.